All right, so let's get started with use case number 4. This is use case 4 for screen flows. If you have not seen the videos for the first, second, and the third use case, I would encourage you watch them first. A lot of insights, a lot of things, a lot of basic things have been covered there, which will set you up for use case 4, right? So let's take a look at the question on use case 4. When the user clicks on the complete survey button on the lead object, right? Ask the user 5 questions. One question per screen. And on the final submit, update the field survey completed as checked on the record and also populate the answers provided as a related response record to the lead. Right? Let's decode the question as we always do. Where is the button going to be? It is going to be on the lead object. What is the name of the button? It will be called complete survey button, right? How many questions are we asking? We are asking 5 questions, and every screen would have one question, which means we have to create 5 screens. So till now we have done use case 1, 2, and 3, which were all single screens, but now comes the real deal, right? We'll be creating 5 screens. We'll be putting 5 questions, one question each, and once they finally submit their answer, right after filling in all the 5 questions, we mark a checkbox field as true or checked, and that field will be called survey completed. Okay, alongside that, whatever the user has answered as part of those 5 questions should also be stored as a response on the related record of a lead, which means we have to create a survey response object, which would be a child object to a lead parent. All right, so that's our use case. If you have been following me, right, you have been doing use case 1, 2, and 3, you have been able to make sense of it and you have been able to do things yourself like we planned. So I would encourage you pause the video here, try this assignment yourself, forget about the challenges for now, just do this bit for now, like try setting yourself up and then come back to the video and take a look whether or not what I have done or what you have done is completely different, completely irrelevant, logical, illogical, and all of that stuff, right? Let's see. So go ahead and pause this video, and for those who want to see me do it and then probably do it with me or learn just by viewing, let's get started. All right, so let's do the basics first. I'll configure the data model setup. So I need a survey completed field on the lead record, and then I also need to create a survey response related object, and the parent to that would be a lead. So I'll just go ahead and create those while you enjoy some silence. All right, okay. All right, so what I've done is I have created a custom object that's called survey response, and I've created association with the lead, right? Which means this particular child looks up to a lead. All right, and then I've created 4 questions. Okay, let's do 4 questions. I have created a question that says comments about your acquisition, which is of type text. How can we reach out, which is of email. Data type, rate us out of 5. This is a pick list wherein you can choose from 1 to 5. And then what is the total deal size, which is a currency, right? What's the total deal that we have won? Okay, so these are the 4 questions that we have added, and we need to associate the survey response to the parent lead whenever we are creating that record. Okay, and then on the lead object, I've created a field that's called survey completed, right? Which is a checkbox. So this field needs to be set as true or checked, and a survey response record needs to be captured for the lead. All right. So this is what we have set up as the data model. So our data model is ready. We'll just create 4 questions. That's okay. And we'll create this complete survey button once we have the basic flow template created. So I'll just go ahead and do that as well now. We can enjoy the silence again because you have seen the first 3 use cases, I believe, right? And you should be fairly knowledgeable on how to configure and just create a quick action and append a flow to it. If you have not done that or you have not seen those videos, take a look at them and come back here, or else just take a look at me doing the same here but in a quicker way. All right. All right, awesome. We have done our setup for everything. Let's switch to the lighting experience and see a lead record and see if the button clicks and the flow opens, right? We have not added anything on the screens. That's something we'll do together. So let's go to leads. And then let's open a lead here. I should see the fill survey button showing up here, right? When I click on the fill survey button, I see that the screen opens and I have the finish button. Awesome. So we have done that, right? And on the details tab, let's see if the survey completed field is here. It is here, right? It can be checked, unchecked. All right. And let's see on the related list, do I have anything here? I have the survey responses, right? If I can go ahead and create and click on the new button, I have the four questions, right? The name and then the four questions are right here. So I can say comments about your acquisition, total deal size, how can we reach out, and rate out of 5. Awesome. So we have the data model, the schema, and all the background setup ready for our flow, and we can now start implementing it. All right. So let's open our use case for screen flow and let's start implementing. So what's our primary thing? We need to ask one question every screen, and then the user should be able to click on the next button and move to the next question, and then finally after the end of the fifth question they should be able to just finish the flow and a survey response should be captured for them. And once the survey response is captured, we also need to update a field on the parent lead, which is the survey completed checkbox. All of this will be doing in this particular use case. Stay with me and try to grab as much as you can, because this one flow can help you understand a lot many things. All right, awesome. So let's go ahead and create 5 screens. First of all, we need four questions, right? So 4 screens. Let's say screen, and I'll just call it survey question 4. This is question 2, right? Let's say done. Then we have, I can just copy this, right? And I can just paste it here. You want to see one more interesting thing? I can multi-select and multi-copy also. Let's say I have these two, right? 1 and 2. I want to create 3 and 4. What do? I go to the select elements button, choose the elements that I want to copy, click on this clipboard icon, and when I click on the plus icon here, it tells me you can paste the 2 elements, right? So cool. Let's now edit the name so that the copy keywords and all of these keywords are removed so that we have a very neat and clean flow, right? So I'll just call this question 3, and the final one would be question 4. All right, so our 4 screens have been set up. Now, some very basic things. The very first screen, does it need a previous button? No, right? That's the very first screen. So I can just configure the footer and say hide previous. But this time we'll be keeping the pause element. Okay, we'll look at the pause element features and how can a user pause the element and come back, right? That's what we were talking in the previous use cases, right? So this time we'll not hide the pause button, we'll keep it and we'll let users pause it if they want. Okay, we'll see how that works. So this is the first screen that should have the next button and the pause button, right? And then let's say done. What's the second screen? It can have the pause element, the previous as well as the next button. Okay, this is showing finish, but this will be called next because it has a screen after it. All right, then say done. This should also have the pause, previous and finish buttons. Awesome. And then even this should have the pause, previous and finish buttons. Okay, all good. So we're good here. Let's remove the header. Let's just say that we don't want to see the header for all the screens. All right, so we've removed the header. Let's save it and let's just click on the save button and activate it. All right, so our basic setup has been done. Now after this screens have captured the inputs, we want to save that response and we also want to update the flag on the lead record. Before doing that, let's now configure our screens. Now think about it. What do we need to do? We need to get the questions, every question, and we need to tag it to one of the fields of a survey response record, right? So based on what you've already learned as part of the previous 3 use cases, or maybe just think about it. How do you want to go about it? When you will be you'll be basically be creating a record at the end, right? You'll be doing something like create records. right? I want you to do some forward thinking so that it helps you building the screen flow and you don't have to repeat or rework, right? So when you do the create records, this is essentially what we'll be doing at the end after we have captured the responses, correct? So screen one, then input whatever their comments, deal size, what is the total, where can we reach them out, and all of and what is the rating. Once they fill all of this stuff, we want to create a survey response record, right? Now you have two options here. Either you go with an record variable or you go with a separate resource thing, right? So if I go with a separate resource thing, which is survey response, I can map all of them here, or I can create a record variable. Now with the record variable, the thing is I have to associate or assign the record variables field with each screen element, correct? So ensure that you progress accordingly. So let's go ahead and start with this. I'll take the input. Now, if I take a look at my survey responses, the first question is comments about your acquisition. Okay, so what type of field was that? It was a text field. So I'll take a text input. All right, let's take the text input. All right, we have the label set here. All right, and then I can make the API name as acquisition comments because I'll need it later, right? So it should be readable and understandable. This should be a required field. Okay, what's the next field? That's all about this particular screen. We are good. What about the next screen? In the next screen, I want to ask them what was the total deal size, which means I need a currency element, right? In order to ensure that the data type entered is correct. So what was your total deal size, right? I'll just call it deal underscore size. Great. Just say require. Okay. That's my second screen. Let's go to the third screen. What was my third question? Where can we reach out? So I need an email. So I'll just choose the email input. All right. So here I'll call it reach out email and I'll change the label. Can we reach out to you? All right. Disabled is false. The placeholder text is fine. You at the rate example.com. You can just change it to something like, Himanshu at the rate, whatever is your placeholder, you can set it. It is not read only and it is required. So for it to be marked required, I can simply choose the global constant. If you notice, I have global constants and global constant that dot true means that it is yes, it is required. And if you don't want it to be required, you can choose the false attribute. These two are available across your flows. You can use this true and false for anything that you want to do. Any decision node, anywhere you want to check yes or no, you can use this true and false tags. Okay, so that's your required. And what would be the value? The value would be something that it would capture. So we won't put a value here. If I put a value, it would be the value that it stores and it will not let user input it. All right, so I'll leave this empty. Okay, so this is reach out email. Awesome. And then what's the final question? Let's take a look at the survey response. Rate us out of 5. So I want a pick list, right? So I want a pick list, which is available here. And when I choose a pick list, I say, please rate us out of 5. Now, we looked into some very basic primitive data types, right? We did text, we did email, we did currency, we did date time, or probably we did date, not date time, but those are straightforward. And now we have just done email, right? If you see the input element that we chose has different properties that you see on the right hand panel. Now we have chosen pick list. So for pick list, you need to define what possible values will be shown in the drop down, right? That's important. So how do you do that? This is where you configure your choices, right? So it tells you whether the user can select multiple options or single options. If you say multiple option, it switches to a radio box because then you can check multiple items. All right, but here we want to only choose one item. So I'll say no, this switches to a dialog box which will contain some options. Okay, now if you notice, it tells me what kind of component do you want to keep. Do you want radio buttons? Because radio buttons are more like, just choose one, right? Or you can choose checkbox, or you can give them a dialog box, a drop down, and they can choose, right? Now here is where you put your choices. Now you can put a choice resource here. What is a choice resource? Basically all that we want the drop down options to show. All right. Now we already, either what we can do is we can create 5 choices. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's go ahead and do that. So if I say choice, I'll say choice 1, right? The label will be called 1 and the data type value will also be 1. I can just create 5 such choices. Let me just go ahead and do this for 2 choices. Okay, I'll just say create a new choice. I'll say this is another choice. I'll say choice 2. You understand where I'm going at, right? I'll say 2 and this should also be 2. I'll say done. Now I'm good with this screen. I'll say done. I'll say save, save, activate. Okay, ignore the warning. That's just for the lightning runtime. All right. Now, if I were to take a look at this flow here, you'll notice that the first 3 questions should be fine, straightforward. We'll take a look at the pick list options. All right. So if I say fill survey here, see, it tells me please write your comments. It was super smooth. Okay. Notice you see the next button. You don't see the previous button. You don't see the pause button. I say next. You see the previous button here, right? What was your total deal size? It was 45,080. That's my local currency. I'll say next. Where can we reach out to you? I'll say Salesforce Makes Sense at the rate gmail.com. I'll say next. And then the final question comes that has 2 drop down options, 1 or 2. See how you have the pick list option showing up, 1 or 2, right? So that's how you've created choices. Now, if you want to create a choice for 5 such choices, the way we just did, you'd have to create 5 choices. That's fine. What if you want to create or give the user the list of the countries or the list of the states that he could possibly be a part of? Would you create 192 countries probably? Would you create 216 countries? Would you create 28, 20, 37 states? Would you do that? Is that necessary? Is that sensible? No. So Flow gives you a better approach in terms of if you already have a pick list, you can just tell me what the pick list is. I'll just pull the values out of it and I'll show them as a drop down. That is something Flow provides. All right. And one more thing to note currently is when I click on the fill survey button, you must have not noticed that we enabled the pause element behavior on screen 2, screen 3 and 4, but it is not showing. That is because we have to turn on a setting within Salesforce. Okay, I'll show you that. But before doing that, let's jump back to our choice thing to fix that. All right, let's get rid of this delete element for now, and let's come back to question 4, and this is where we are. So I'll just get rid of these 2 choices. I'll get rid of this choice and I'll say I want a new choice resource. Okay, and when I say new choice resource, I have an option to say pick list choice set. All right, so either I can choose from a collection or I can choose from a filtered list of records, or I can even choose based on a pick list, right? It uses the values of a pick list. That's what I'm talking about. We already have a field on the survey response object that I want to refer to. So if I say pick list choice set, I say the name should be rating choice. And then what is the object that I want to look at? I want to look at the survey response object, correct? And then what's the data type? It's a pick list data type. Now, when I say pick list, it will automatically show me all the fields which are of type pick list in that object. You see, I see the field that's called rate us out of 5. So I'll say rate us out of 5 should be available, and whatever is the default order of the field, leave it as is. So it will show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. In case you want a requirement that you want to see 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can just sort it descending. You can do that. Okay. I'll leave it to default for now, and I'll say done. All right, now I can just choose that particular rating choice here, and that is my pick list choice. Now I don't have to create n number of choices here. I'll automatically get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I change the pick list field on the Salesforce org, I add 10 more values from 6 to 15, even that will automatically show up here. I don't have to create a choice resource coming back here and modify the flow. No, not needed. All right. Great. So we have been able to do this. All the 4 screens are created and ready. Let's go back to the screen and let's just confirm. Yes, all good. All right. So I'll just say save. Now, once the user has filled in all the 4 things, what do we want to do? We want to create a record, right? So I'll simply say create records. All right. Now, when I say create records, I want to create a survey response. Okay. Now I can go either ways. I'll just go ahead and say use separate resources, create a survey response record. And what should be here? Comments about your acquisition would be acquisition comments. This is the API name that we put on screen 1, remember? So I'll just map it. What is the deal size? Total deal size field should have the deal size attribute, this one right here, right? What about reach out? How can we reach out? This should be reach out email dot value. You see how this is letting you choose the API name differently. So I say reach out. This is a screen component, right? It's an email component. I can click on it and I can choose whatever value I want. So the value attribute is the attribute that will store the value that the user has input on that field, correct, on the screen. So I'll choose the value element here. And then finally, what was the fourth question? Rate us out of 5, and this should be please rate us out of 5 pick list value, whatever they choose here. Okay, let's confirm that what was here. It was please rate us out of 5, right? I'll just say rating factor. Let's just change the name here and say done. Let's come back here, and now this is called rating factor. You don't have to manually change it, all good. Okay, we forgot one thing. We also want to associate this to a parent lead, right? Now how do I do that? Do I have a variable? No, so I have to create a correct record ID variable. So I'll click on new resource. I'll come here, I'll say variable, and I'll call it record ID with I capital, and I'll call it text. Okay, since we don't need values from this particular record, so I'll just keep it text. If I needed any specific value, I would have just chosen the entire record. Okay, or will we might need to update this survey completed flag, right? So let's keep it record, safe side. Okay, I'll say this is of type lead and this is available for input. So this will contain the entire record of the lead. Wherever the screen flow is pasted, it will capture the current context or whichever record is currently in question. Let's say done. All right, so now that we have done that, I'll just save the flow. All right, so now it has two warnings. What is the first warning? It says, if you notice now, it does not let you activate, which means there's something in the warning or issue that is not allowing you to activate. So the first thing says the screen includes screen components that require lightning runtime, which is fine. That is fine. But the second thing is the field parent lead isn't compatible with the S object element record ID. Record ID cannot be S object. Now understand what is the error. I'll give you a second probably to think about it. What is the mistake we made? What we have done is parent lead is a reference field, right? It and what I've done is I've just associated it to the record ID. What is record ID? Record ID is the entire record. It cannot be mapped, the entire record cannot be mapped to a ID field. So I have to go in and filter it by the ID field and now align it. That's the correct reference and association, right? The parent lead should be pointed to the ID, the record ID. Let's now save it. Okay, and now the activate button is available. So let's go ahead and activate it. All good. Let's now test it out. Excited? Let's refresh and let's click on the fill survey button. So it asks me the first question. Let's say I say next. It says please enter some valid input. Input is not optional. Required check is working fine. This was smooth. I'll be back for more. Right? Let's say next. What was the total deal size? I'll say this was 25,000 dirhams. I'll say next. Where can we reach out to you? I'll say Salesforce makes sense at the rate gmail.com. Next. Finally, please rate us out of 5. See, the 5 options are showing up. I'll say this is a 4 and I'll say next. So you see, this has created a survey response record. You see this record ID showing up. This has created a record. And if I open this particular record here, I see that the parent lead is tagged. Awesome. I see that the comment, the deal size, the reach out and the rating, everything has been stored as is. Fancy. So good. Awesome. Right? How easy has this been to create 5 screens, give a guided journey to the user, and still have control behind the scenes? Whatever I want to show, I'm able to show. Whatever I want the user to choose, they're able to choose. Whatever I want to validate before moving on, I can do that. 5 screens. We can go next. We can say previous. Do you want to see the previous? Let's take a look at previous. Let's say I say fill survey again. Right? I say next. I will not be able to go next. So let's say awesome deal done. Right? And now if I say next, right? Can I go back to the previous screen? Yes, I can. I come back here and I say for now. I modify my input and I go back. Can I go back again? Yes, you can. Unlimited times. There's no limitations here. No subscriptions. You can just change everything. You can go back to next, previous. You can play as long as you want. All right. So that's the feature that previous provides you. Okay. You have things on the edit state and you can modify them and come back and click on the next button. All right, so that was the previous button and the next button. Now, for us to be able to understand certain things, you see that the record ID is showing up here because I did not give a name attribute to the survey response, right? And I did not say that it should be a auto number. So I can either go ahead and change that to the in the data model. I can just make the name field as an auto number, or I can give it a relevant name. All right, so let's give it a relevant name. Let's look at how to give the name. So I'll just give the name here. So every name has to be unique, right? Every survey response should be uniquely identified. What do I do? How do I ensure that, right? So what I can do is I can create kind of a combination of things. What if the survey response should be captured as survey response for space the name of the lead, the person who's been acquired, right? So how do I do that? How do I put that value here? So I want survey response for Bertha Boxer, but I cannot put Bertha Boxer here, right? I have to put dynamic names, correct? So I need to be able to put dynamic names because this survey response will be captured per record, correct? So how do I do that? So instead of writing this name here, what I can do is I can create a new resource. I can configure a formula, right? We have been looking at variables. We have looked at pick list choice set. We've looked at choice. Now we can look at formula, okay? And I'll say the API name is survey response name. Okay, the data type will be text, and here I'll say insert this text right here, survey response for, and here I can just dynamically bring in the name. Now, from where do I get the name of the lead? I get it from the record ID variable. That's correct. So I go into the record ID and I say, just give me the full name. Check syntax. It says this invalid, so I need to concatenate these two things. So I'll say, put this into a string literal and then followed by the name of the person. Let's say check syntax now. I have to put a plus icon for it to be concatenated. Valid. All right. Since we are trying to create a text data type formula, it is saying that the two things that you are trying to put together are two different things. One is a merge field and one is a static text. So if you are putting a static text, put it in a string literal, and then if you are wanting to concatenate it with something, add a plus sign to it. That's why this particular syntax. Okay. There's a lot of things in formulas here. You can choose any variable, any value available here. Okay, you can choose any function available here. You can do all of this stuff. All the functions are available. Now this is pretty much similar to what you have done in validation rules. Okay, so for validation rules, if you are not good at configuring formulas or creating those validation rules and formulas, I have that separate video in explain series. You can see that, you can see an eye icon coming on top of your screen right now if you want to look at that later. Okay, but be with me right now on this particular use case. We'll complete this and then you can jump into something else. All right, so this is survey response for the name. Let's say done now, and let's say save as, right? And as soon as I created the variable is tagged here because I created it from here, correct? So it is tagged here. The name should be called survey response name. So I'll say save as, save, activate. Let's go back. Let's refresh our screen and let's create a new survey. So I'll say fill survey, awesome deal, next. Total deal size was 245K. You can reach out to me at himanshu@gmail.com. Next, and then I'll rate you 5. Next. All right, look at how the name is populated properly now. Correct? So this is now survey response for Bertha Boxer where the name is coming dynamically. So you can create formulas and create any kind of text combination, any kind of combination that you want. You can store functional values, you can store technical values, you can store literal values, you can store calculations, and all of this stuff can be done by formulas. Okay, take my use cases as examples and try to think of 5 things that you can do with this formulas, right? Immediately based on your current work requirements. Think of it like this, and then you'll be able to make sense of, oh, okay, this is how it can be done. Oh, okay, this is probably why I would need it. Oh, okay, why would I have used triggers of process builders? Oh, can I still migrate to flows? Yes, I can. All of these questions will start in your head and you'll probably get better answers. Okay. Awesome. So we have been able to successfully create 5 fields, 5 screens, or rather 4 screens. We have been creating a complete survey button and we are able to populate the answers. Now, one more thing is pending, which is the survey completed checked. right? So what we want to do in our flow is now we want to update our current lead record in question and update a specific field in that particular lead record. How do we do that? Once the survey response is created, I can just go ahead and say update records. Just how you have create records, you have something that's called update records. I'll say update survey completed to check to true. Probably I can say true. Okay, so I'll say specify the condition, or I can just say use the IDs. Okay, now if I say use the ID, I can say record ID. I can say choose the record ID. But have I updated the record ID record variable, and have I marked the flag as true? I have not done that, right? So I'll just go ahead and say specify the conditions, choose an object. Which lead record should be modified? The one whose lead ID is equal to record ID dot ID. Correct? So this would be the record for which I want to update. Which field do I want to update? I want to update the survey completed field and I want to mark it as true. So you see, when I say true, it shows me the global constant true. I don't have to keep it like this. I have to use the global constant variable, which is stored like this, and it's called true. And this will set the box as checked. Want to see it? Let's click on the save button. Let's activate. All right, this is activated. Let's go back to our page and refresh. All right, let's click on the fill survey button and let's say deal was too good to be won. Loved it. All right, I'll say next. The total deal size was 25,000. Say next. h@m.com and I'll rate you 2. I'll say next. So this should create a new survey, and then this time it should also set the flag as true. If you notice, the survey completed flag has been set to true. Right? So see, what have you been able to do by just configuring things on the screen, similar to Process Builder, but much more powerful, right? Take a moment to understand what you really did here. You were successfully able to show the user 5 screens, ask them 5 different things, create a record behind the scenes, update another record behind the scenes, and all of it without writing any line of code. This is why Salesforce is promoting flows like crazy, and this is why, even though you are a developer, you should know flows and you should be able to write them. And if you are an administrator, analyst, or a consultant, this is the only tool that you need to know right now based on the demand that Salesforce folks have. Okay. All right. So we have been able to do pretty much everything except for one last thing. One last thing is the pause element, right? I don't forget something that I missed. So I'll just show you why the pause element was not showing up. So if I go to setup, there's something that's called process automation settings, right? So you have to configure or enable certain checkboxes and permissions for your system to understand, okay, I need to do this or that. So process automation settings is here. All right, and under this section you should see something related to the pause flow. Let users pause flows in between. I mean, this should be a checkbox. So if you see let users pause flow is something that's available, I'll just check it and I'll say save. All right, and now that we have done that, flows can be paused by any user. And let's try to certify or verify that. Now if I click on the fill survey button, you see the pause element is now showing up. Okay, I'll say deal done. Next, I'll say pause. So you see, I want to come back later for this work. I'll say okay. So you see the flow interview is now paused. I can just close it and I can just refresh my page. Okay, let's see what happens if I click on the fill survey button here. Okay, it starts from the beginning, but there's something that's called as paused flow interviews. Okay, let's take a look at the home page. I don't think it is here, but I can take a look at on the app launcher. We might have to drag and drop that particular box. Let's see. Let me edit this page. So you see something that's called paused flow interviews can be dragged and dropped here. All right. And I'll just say save. I've just dropped the paused flow interviews label here. and I'll say save. I'll go back. And now when I open the home page, I should see something that says paused flow interviews, right? Now, how does this help? For someone who has filled a loan application, let's say they completed 3 screens which had 100 fields that they filled, and there were two more screens left, they paused the flow. They paused the flow by going to their fill survey button and they clicked on the pause button. Okay, and once they click on the pause button, they came back the very next day after all the documents and everything. So on the home page they will be able to see I have paused this flow, so they don't have to go to that particular lead record and start the fill survey button again. They don't need to do this. They don't need to come here, and they don't need to go to their application, and they don't need to click on the fill survey button here. Okay, they don't need to do this here. Instead, what they can do is they can go to their home page and they can see whatever they have paused, right? And I can simply click on the resume button. What does that mean? When I say the resume button, I click on it, it opens the second screen, right? And it says that, fill in your information. So I'll say my total deal size was 25,000. But if you notice, it is starting with the second question, and the UI is a bit different because pause flow interviews have a bit of a different space and UI to it. But primarily the functionality will be the same. See this, you see the second question here. If I say previous, you see your first information is still stored. Make sense? So I can simply say next. I can fill in the 25,000 information. I can say reach me out at h@m.com, and I can say next. Oh my God, you are still asking me another documentation, another upload. I'll take more time. I'll pause the flow here. I'll say need to come back later with full documents. All right, and I'll say okay. Now this flow is paused. Right now, as soon as I pause it, so you see the previous paused interview is out, and now if I refresh my page, I see a new interview created for me. This is something Salesforce tracks and Salesforce maintains. I'll just say resume here, and I now have the final screen showing to me with all the previous screens updated with the values already. I don't need to fill them, right? So you get the idea of the pause element. And if I just go ahead and say 3 here and I say next, this should complete the survey response, create a survey response record, associate it to the lead record, and also finally check that survey completed checkbox on the Bertha Boxer lead. All right, so that is pretty much it from this particular use case. Let's go back to our screen, and I hope this was really fruitful and you understood a lot of things, how to configure different screens, how to play with the previous and the pause element, how does a pause element or a pause flow interview work, how do you resume it, what setting do you have to enable for everyone to be able to pause flows, how do you use formulas, how do you use choices, a lot of things, right? So that's great. Now let's take a look at the challenge. So to look at the challenge, let's look at what needs to be done. So when the survey completed is checked, which means that flag that we are checking is checked, the user should not see the screen to fill in the questions again, and should see a message that she has already completed the survey. Okay, so that's the first challenge. The second challenge is user should be able to pause the flow anywhere they want and come back later to finish it. This is something that I've already explained because it needed some uh, configurations and understanding, so that's okay. We have covered this particular challenge, right? And on question 3, if user chooses 1 or 2, which is basically our rating, right, which is our last question, user chooses 1 or 2, user should see another field to fill the reasons for the rating, which means if they're giving a low rating, right, 1 or 2, why are they giving it? We need to ask another question, and that should be a mandatory question. All right, so you have two challenges here, this one right here and then this one right here. I'll suggest you pause the video here, try to do it yourself. Let's see you are able to do one challenge or both the challenges or none. Everything is fine because I'll be explaining the challenges in just a while. All right, awesome. So the very first challenge is when survey completed flag is checked, they should not be able to fill the questions again, and which makes sense, right? Why to fill the question again? All right, so I'll go to my flow, and here I'll check something. How do I check whether the survey is completed or not? Think about it. Which object do I need to check? I need to check the lead object. That's correct. What flag do I need to check? I need to check the survey completed flag. Even that's correct. So can I put a decision node at the very beginning here where I check is the survey pre-filled? Say yes, it is already completed, right? If it is yes, what certifies it is already filled. The certification is record ID dot survey completed flag should be equal to true. Which true? Global constant dot true, right? If it is true, that means it's already completed. If it is not, no, it is not completed. So if it is already completed and not completed can be two different decision paths that the flow needs to travel, right? Now, what should happen if it is not already completed? All of this should happen. Now, how do I move all of this here? Simple. I told you, select elements, choose whatever you want to move, copy, paste. All right. You can either do this. I'll just undo this, right? This is how you undo and redo. Even these options are available. Or you can simply cut the element from here and paste it. This will avoid the copy keyword coming up in every screen element, right? Which is very painful and hard to read for any other developer. So since this is only 4 or 5 screens, I can simply cut the elements and paste. See? So awesome. Cut the elements and paste. All right. Now, if this happens, basically, if the survey is not completed, I want them to do all of these things. But if it is already completed, what do I want to do? I do not want the user to see the screen and they should see a message that they've already filled the survey. So I can simply create a new screen. I can put a display text, correct? So I can put a display text. And here I'll say greeting. I'll say, hey. Now, how do I address the user with their name? Can I do that here? I'll say, hey, seems like you have already filled the survey. Thank you. Okay. Now, how do I use the name of the person here? Can I do that? Yes, you can. You can choose the record ID variable. If you're able to figure this out, awesome. I think I'm able to teach you very well, right? So you can put record ID dot first name as the merge field here. This will now automatically pick up the name of the lead record. Hey, Bertha, seems like you've already filled the survey. All right, so I'll just say this right here. I'll put it on the center. I like things center aligned. I'll say bold. I'll say green. All right, and I'll just choose the green color. Done. Okay, this is too light, it will not be visible, so I'll choose some darker green. Awesome. I'll say done. Oh, I have not given a label to the screen, so I'll say already filled screen. And not already filled, survey already filled. It should make sense, right? So I'll say survey already filled, and I don't want the footer to be shown, basically just the next button. No previous or pause. Why do they need it? They don't, right? So I'll just get rid of that. And I'll say I don't even need to see the header. So that's it. Let's say done. And I can end the flow here, right? Why to go right below? So I'll just end it here. Somehow the end does not come in the search results, but it shows up here. So I'll say end, and then this is ending here. Okay, let's click on the save button. Save. That's our first challenge. What's the last challenge? We already did the second challenge, that they should be able to pause the flow. On question 3, or rather the final question, if the user chooses the 1 or 2 rating, which means the less ratings, they should be able to see another field to fill the reason for the rating. All right, how do you do that? Think about it. This is the question 4. This is where we are rating, correct? So if the user has filled in either 1 or 2, right? If they've put in the value as 1 or 2, I want to show another field here. So first of all, I need to show another text input, correct? First of all, that's the thing. So I'll say, please help us assess you better next time, right? And this is where they will fill in their details of what went wrong if they put 1 or 2. Okay. And then when should this be visible? This should only be visible when a custom condition is met, right? What is a custom condition? I can either say that all conditions are met, or I can say any conditions are met, or I can say custom conditions are met. Custom condition gives you a option to configure your filter criteria, 1 or 2 and 3 and 4 or 5 and all of that stuff, right? But the first two are just all or any, which means and or, right? So in my case, if I think about it like this, if they choose to put 1 or 2 as the value, I want them to see this field, correct? So I can say any conditions are met, and I can simply say that the conditions something that's happening. Let's click on the cancel button. Let's go back here. Let's put a display text, and let's say not a display text, this should be a input text because we want a user input. We don't want to just show the output, right? So I'll say text. I'll put this here. I'll say help us assess you better next time, right? And here I want to put a component visibility. I'll just put the HS capital, and then I'll say component visibility, and this should say any condition is met. And here I'll choose the field that I have on top. I'll say the rating factor equals 1. All right, either it equals 1 or it equals 2. These are the only two reasons or only two choices for which I want to see this particular um, text box. And you see, when I chose the any condition, it automatically says 1 or 2. All right, so I'll say done here, and I'll say save. Awesome. Let's now activate it and let's see both our challenges live. So this is activated without any errors. I'll say refresh. What was our first challenge? The first one was if the survey completed is set, I should see a message, right? So right now the survey completed flag is set to true. So let's take a look at the fill survey button. What happens? It says, hey Bertha, it seems like you've already filled the survey. Thank you. Nothing needs to be done. Finish. No survey response record got created. All of it is still there, the way it was before. All right. But what if the survey details are not filled and let's say this is unchecked? This is when the form should show up, correct? So let's just uncheck the flag, click on the fill survey button and start filling it again. Deal done. Finally. So excited. All right. Let's say next. What was your total deal size? This time it was 500K. Let's say next. Reach out to you h at the rate m h.m at the rate llc.com, right? Let's say next, and this is where I want to rate them. So if I say 3, nothing happens. If I say 2, you see the box shows up. What have you been able to do now? You have been able to conditionally render a field based on a user input without having to refresh, without having to write any single line of code. Fancy? So even this can be done, right? What if you choose 5 again? What happens if you choose 5? The box goes away. What if you choose 1 again? The box shows up, right? So I'll say I wanted more phone calls instead of emails, right? And I'll just go ahead and say next. That completes our survey. The response is captured. The fifth response is captured. I've not captured the assessment right now, but yeah, if you create another field, it will store that as well. Should not be a problem. All right. So it was a very good use case I put in because I knew that, this particular use case will for sure ensure that I cover a lot of things. A lot of things will start making sense. And with this information in your hand and with the previous 3 use cases, you are very well set up to create or build screen flows on your own. I still have one more use case to go, but then I have a super challenge coming up for you right after one more use case. And that's when I would want you to perform and I would want you to create a screen for yourself based on the question that's given. Use your imagination, put your thinking cap on, and think about how would you want to resolve that particular super challenge. And that will give me confidence in terms of, okay, what I'm teaching, what I'm trying to train or mentor is perfectly working fine, and I'm able to deliver what I started this curriculum for, I started this masterclass for. All right, fancy, great. Lot of things learned. And again, I said this in my use case number 2 video that if there's any specific use case you figure out, you find problems in, you don't have idea about, you want some guidance, or you want a use case to be shown, something to be displayed, comment down that particular use case and let me know what exactly do you want me to show, and I'll probably try to create a video out of it, right? These use cases are something I have formulated on my own in terms of what I think would be good for you to learn in terms of basics. But then if you as a particular student have anything specific you want me to address or record or train or tutor or mentor, please add that comment down below in the comment section, and I can probably create a video out of it and probably help you explain that concept better, right? Awesome. That was all about use case 4. I'll see you guys in use case 5. Till then, keep writing and creating flows. Bye.